very honored for the invitation to be here today. I'm Hannerieke van Hout. I'm a child neurologist in the Center for Lysosomal and Metabolic Diseases in Rotterdam. And today I will present on charting the evolution from natural history to new frontiers in classic infantile Pompe disease. Okay, my journey into Pompe disease started in 1998 when I had the enormous honor to join the research team of Arnold Reuser and Ans van der Ploeg in Rotterdam. And shortly after me, Nadine van der Beek joined the team, and she's also here in the audience today and will present later on the IPA. Little did we know how the world would change over time. The innovative research of Arnold Reuser was carried on by Pim Pijnappel after his retirement, and the team grown. From a team of very few people to a really big team. And our international collaborations, they grew over time and they remain until present. And with us here today is Marta Farraguna from Italy, who's also very interested in Pompe disease. When we started with enzyme replacement therapy, the therapy opened a journey into the unknown, very much like the explorers did when they went to Mare Incognito and Terra Incognita. They found themselves in new frontiers, and that's very much like classic infantile Pompe disease evolved over time. So let's see, how did the phenotype evolve? So first, where was the baseline? Untreated, classic infantile Pompe disease presents within the 3rd to 4th month of life. And in the study, which we did in 20 Dutch patients and 190 cases from literature, we learned that patients presented with a progressive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which you can see on the left upper corner, in the big heart on the thorax. And on the right side, you see the progression and the significant increase over time. The progressive hypotony, the weakness of the child, will prevent it to learn to walk and to stand. And over time, cardiorespiratory failure will lead to death, typically within the 1st year of life. And I try to remain with the microphone, and that's why I don't look at that side, but just know, I know you're there, but if I look there, then the sound goes. So, in 1999, the first children worldwide were treated. First in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and thereafter in Duke in the USA. And the number of studies evolved over time. The patients in Rotterdam were treated with enzyme replacement therapy from rabbit milk in doses from 15 to 20 mg per kg every week. When we looked at the muscle biopsies after 12 weeks of treatment, we saw that the enzyme activity increased. However, it did not normalize, and that led us to the decision to increase the dose to 40 mg per kg per week, which was, in hindsight, a very wise choice. The patients on the other side were treated with enzyme replacement therapy from CHO cells in a dose of 5 mg per kg 2 times a week, which thereafter was increased as well to variable doses, and in the extension to 10 to 20 mg per kg weekly, up to 20 mg per kg every 2 weeks. These studies were followed by a pivotal study, and that compared 2 dose regimens, 20 mg per kg versus 40 mg per kg every 2 weeks. And from that study, no significant differences between the 2 doses were found in that specific cohort, and therefore 20 mg per kg every 2 weeks was chosen as the dose to register. So, how is enzyme replacement therapy performing in the real world in classic infantile Pompe disease? In the last years, big real-world cohorts were published from Germany, France, and Italy. The Germans choose to publish their oldest patients in between 7 and 19.5 years, and the French and Italian groups published their whole cohort, and that ranged from 28 to 50 patients. And the data of the 28 Dutch patients are also in the table. Survival dose varied, with quite some patients on higher doses. The highest dose in the French cohort was 20 mg per kg every week, and in the German and Italian and Dutch cohort 40 mg per kg per 2 weeks. And in the Dutch cohorts, all the patients after 2008 were treated with 40 mg per kg each week. Survival varied from 54% to 100%, with ventilator-free survival ranging from 30% to 54%, and 25% to 75% of the patients learned to walk, with in between 21% and 36% of the patients remaining able to walk. The heart normalized in most of the patients. So variable doses were used in the real world, and we wanted to know what was the optimal dose regimen to get the best effects of therapies. And we have studied that in the European Pompe consortium together with Germany and France and Italy. And we looked at 124 patients, 116 patients treated and 8 untreated. And when we looked at the dose regimens, it was a plethora of doses and frequencies. So this learned us that doctors were trying to optimize the results of treatment. Then looking at the patients with the constant dose regimens, we saw that survival in the group with the high dose, 40 mg per kg every week, was significantly better than the survival was on the standard dose of 20 mg per kg every 2 weeks. And this difference that remained if we looked at the patients that did change their dose regimen, but we looked at the dose at start and the dose at the end of the study. And I will very swiftly touch upon something on which Dr. Nancy Chen will present later, newborn screening. Newborn screening was an important step forward. By starting treatment really early, the survival improved significantly. In red, the patients found through newborn screening, and in blue, the patients treated after start of symptoms. And again, in this study, dose varied. Another important step forward was the fact that we really had to monitor and manage antibody titers, because in classic infantile Pompe disease, patients can develop antibodies. CRIM-negative patients, patients that do not produce any enzyme activity, any protein, are more prone to make antibodies, but classic infantile patients that do produce some protein can have an antibody reaction as well. So immune tolerance induction at start of therapy is important, and management of high sustained antibodies as well. When we look at survival, the survival of the patient with a combined regimen of enzyme replacement and immune tolerance in the induction, the dotted line in the graphs, that survival is significantly better than the patients on enzyme replacement therapy only, and this is a CRIM-negative cohort. Importantly, the antibody should be monitored continuous and long-term, and immune tolerance induction should be repeated if necessary, or high sustained antibodies should be treated by adding something extra to the program called bortezomib. When treating patients who have developed a high antibody titer, it is important to realize that it has to be a long-term treatment with rituximab and methotrexate also after week 32. In the last presentation I did at the AMDA, I covered all the organs that are involved in classic infantile Pompe disease. And we will touch upon that a little bit later in the program, so I will not do the same presentation again. But I will focus on the heart, walking ability, and brain and cognition in classic infantile Pompe disease. So what about the heart? In 2018 and later in 2022, we published our long-term follow-up, longitudinal of the heart of our patients with controls every 3 to 6 months. And we found that the normalization of the heart did occur in 93% of the patient. and time to normalization was at about 30 weeks of treatment. In a follow-up study, we found that this result persisted over time, and that even with more sensitive methods called circumferential strain and longitudinal strain, very sensitive methods to measure the heart and heart function, that even those results were really good. However, on the EKG, where we test the conduction of the heart, we still found that some problems persisted. When we then look at walking ability, and here the results of the APOC study that I have mentioned in 124 patients, and we concentrated on those patients that could have learned to walk, so those over 18 months of age, we found that 51% of that cohort learned to walk, with more patients, a higher percentage of patients walking with a higher, when they were treated with higher doses, 40 mg per week. However, not every patient that learns to walk remains able to walk. So in the right side, you see a graph with, at the start, 100% of the patient being able to walk, and gradually patients lose the ability to walk. Why did that happen? Well, when we watch this video, we see that the muscle disease, which normally leads to weakness around the shoulders and the pelvis, now also leads to distal muscle weakness, as you see that this child does not lift her feet adequately. We studied this in 16 patients. We gathered longitudinal follow-up, and we analyzed all the videos that we make during the physiotherapy assessments every 3 to 6 months. And we found the following, and this is a difficult graph, but I'll try to talk you swiftly through it. On the left side, you see the lower extremities. On the right side, you see the upper extremities. And we studied muscle function. Every 2 bars is one patient. The upper bar is proximal muscle weakness. The lower bar is distal muscle weakness. If the bar is green, that means that the muscle function is normal. If the bar is yellow or orange, it means that muscle function is impaired. If the bar is red, that means that that muscle function is lost. And on the horizontal axis, you see the age of the patients. What did we learn? And we did this study together with Jeroen van der Dorpel, and also all my studies are performed together with Nadine van Beek. We learned that distal muscle weakness appears early, and it precedes proximal muscle weakness. Weakness of the feet occurs frequently. Less frequently, we notice weakness of the hands. Distal muscle weakness in the feet is often profound and can lead to the necessity of using splints, ankle foot orthosis, and foot apps. So what causes this distal muscle weakness? Well, there's a very nice publication of the German group, and they have studied the muscles by MRI, and they did muscle biopsies of distal and proximal muscles and the nerve biopsy. And they learned that muscle involvement was far more profound than nerve involvement. However, recently, the French group also published their results on EMG, and that's a way of testing the muscles and testing the conductivity of the nerves. And they found that the EMG in some patients was myopathic, more a sign of problems in the muscle, while the EMG in other patients was more neuropathic. So it might be a combined problems, and we're still really studying that. At start of enzyme therapy, we already knew that the therapy could not pass the blood-brain barrier because the brain is very much protected by tight junctions. And that's good, because if you have a flu, you don't get the flu in your head immediately. So we set on from the first treatment of patients to study the brain. How can we study the brain? Well, we can do cognitive tests, neuropsychological assessments to see what it does with our cognition. We can study the brain by performing MRI scans. And we can study the brain more in depth on the scans by looking at the integrity of all the connections of the brain, the white matter. And then last but not least, we can study biomarkers. Neurofilament light is a protein which is also found in the axons of the cytoskeleton of the nerves. And on the right side, you see the nerve with all the twines. And then you see the long connection coming out of that. That is in the white matter, and that's the axon. We have learned over time that in white matter, in diseases involving the nervous system, this protein can go up. It goes up in the fluid in your head, the cerebrospinal fluid, which is also correlated to the levels of neurofilament light, which you can find in serum. And that's nice, because then you can measure it in blood. You don't have to make an MRI scan. And so we did all that. And we did it in a group of 19 patients. We had 53 neuropsychological assessments and 54 MRIs, longitudinal follow-up of patients in between the age of 0.6 and to 22.5 years of age. What did we find? On the left side, you see all those graphs. The left upper corner is full-scale IQ. And on the left lower corner, you see performance IQ. On the right upper corner, verbal IQ. Right lower corner, processing speed. The patients all have different colors. And on the horizontal scan, the horizontal axis are their ages. Normally, our IQ remains the same over time. And these results are on classic infantile onset Pompe disease patients. We found that there was indeed a slow decline of full-scale IQ, performance IQ, and processing speed. The decline was slow, though significant, and on the long term, clinically relevant. Within patients, the situation varied. One patient had normal cognition and a normal MRI, while two other patients developed epilepsy and had a fast progressive cognitive decline. And all the other patients were in between. However, knowing that there is a slow decline, these patients were all able to communicate effectively and live meaningful lives. Looking at the MRI scans, you see on the left side an MRI of a healthy person, and on the right side 3 scans of the same patient with classic infantile Pompe disease at the age of 9, 17, and 22 years old. And over time, you see the white matter abnormalities. That on the left side, you see those white banana-shaped ventricles. It's the center of the brain, and around it, you see the dark area that is called white matter. When it's dark gray, it's good. When it becomes white, it's abnormal. And you see the hyperintensity, so the more white areas, they progress over time. What we did is we designed an MRI score to measure this. It was either normal, then the patient would gain 0 points, or a region was abnormal, then it was 1 point. And there was nothing in between, because we saw that the white matter abnormalities varied in intensities. So with that 12-point scale that we designed, we found a significant increase of MRI score over time of 0.5 to 0.6 point per year in between the age of 5 and 15 years. And this increase was associated with a significant decline of the measurements we had from neuropsychological assessments. And this is important because now the MRI scan relates to what we see at the patient in the clinic. When we looked more in depth to the integrity of the white matter with digital tract imaging, we found this. And it's also a little bit difficult to see, so I'll start with a graph on the right side. The green box plot in every part, those are 3,050 population-based controls, children. The red box plot are our Pompe patients, and they are outside the range of the normal healthy population. You also see light gray spots. Those are patients who have limited white matter abnormalities. Darker gray spots, more abnormalities, and black spot, most abnormalities. What we learned is that the DTI metrics are abnormal and that the deviations were larger in patients with more white matter abnormalities, and that we found these aberrations mostly in large association tracts. We also looked at some late onset patients, and they were normal, with normal MRIs without deviations from typical neurodevelopment. So that was a good sign on this DTI. In another study, we looked at the neurofilament light as a biomarker for involvement of the brain. And we looked at the neurofilament light level in blood longitudinal at around the age of 1, 5, and 10 years, and then around the time of MRIs of those patients. We found that this biomarker increased significantly over time and deviated from age and sex match controls after the age of 5 years. And there was an association between the increase in neurofilament light and the metrics in the neuropsychological assessments. There was, however, intra and inter-individual variation, and this was an indication of brain involvement. So, conclusive, we took a giant leap forward. The disease changed enormously. The patients now survive. However, not every patient can survive, and not every patient can reach puberty and young adolescence. Cardiac dimension and function normalize, but rhythm disturbances do remain. Patients can learn to walk, but not every patient learns to walk, and they do not remain able to walk. Survival and outcome is optimized by a dose of 40 mg per week in myosime, and then later we'll talk about second generation enzyme replacement therapy, by early start of treatment, and by monitoring and management of antibody titer. New treatment should include the brain as a target, as we see more and more that the brain is also involved in this disease and that the treatment cannot reach the brain. This research we can only do with the help of all of you, and it is an enormous effort to help us in this research. It's a collaboration with you, without whom we would not be able to do this, and you are the expert in this field, not us. And also with the help of a lot of other funds and foundations, and not in the least the IPA and the AMDA. Thank you very much for your attention.